All right, and welcome to The Balance. It's Saturday, not Sunday. We will be doing a drop tomorrow, but it is. Can you believe that the month of May has already come and pretty much gone? The Indianapolis 500 is in the books. We're going to be talking with Tony Donahue of the Tony D podcast and Unverified to break down probably one of the most exciting Indy 500s ever. And I tell you what, everything that the Indy 500 props up to be, it lived up to all of that. But on his way up to Detroit is Tony Donahue. I appreciate you taking some time with us as you make your drive up to Detroit. Man, what a great win for Felix Rosenqvist with the Indy 500, and of course, you know what you literally saw the climax of victory and then the fall of defeat. Just a incredible scene there at the Indianapolis 500. Tony, welcome back to the Balance, sir. How are you?
Yeah, no, you're right. It's one of those things where you weren't sure with the rain rolling in, and you had the little bit of a delay right around the halfway mark. And was it going to be a race for the 200th lap? Was it going to be a race to whenever it started to rain? We saw some sprinkles. Luckily, they never lost the track, and then it's set up for, obviously, the yellow that we had on lap 192, which set up a red flag, and then we had the brush off the wall with Mick Schumacher, which set up, obviously the craziest shootout that we've ever seen at the 500, yes, going green and white at the same time. And, Malukas kind of controlling the field for, about 97% of that lap before Felix got up on the outside. It was a ballsy pass by Felix. He was battling with his teammate, regen on the hybrid, and then deployed to get to the finish line. It was an unbelievable finish. You couldn't have scripted it any better. And you feel bad for David Malukas, right? This is a kid to Team Penske who's going to end up winning his first race. Might be tomorrow, might be next week at Gateway. Is going to win an Indianapolis 500 or two. He was so close. You just kind of hope it's not that Marco Andretti situation, right? Where very early on in your career, you've got a shot to win it, and you get edged out by a veteran at the line, and you never really have an opportunity to get to win it. I don't think that'll happen with David Malukas. I think David Malukas is going to have an opportunity to win this race multiple times over the next 10 to 12 years. So you feel for him, but what Felix is able to do, which is what we've talked about Felix hasn't been able to do, and that's finish. And it's been going into a weekend, he's got speed and he qualifies well, yeah, and then you look down and he finishes 12th. Or, you go back to qualifying last weekend. He had the fastest car on Fast Friday. He had the fastest time going into that Fast 6 shootout. And then he was delegated to start fourth. And it was like, well, that's just kind of a microcosm for Felix Rosenqvist. He's fast on Friday, but can't back it up throughout the weekend. And for him to finish that off in the fashion that he did, get Meyer Shank their second career win, both wins coming at the Indianapolis 500, was just absolutely remarkable. It was a great topper to the cake of the month of May itself. And, we heard it in the banquet. We've heard from other drivers. There's no better guy in the paddock than Felix Rosenqvist, and there wasn't a bad word to say about him, how he drove, and becoming a father for a first time, and weeks later, winning the Indianapolis 500. What a month of May it's been for Felix.
Oh, absolutely. I could not agree with you more. I mean, what a nice guy he is. He's just, we've talked about on this show about Meyer Shank being able to take that next step to be a major player in the IndyCar series. Do you think this will help elevate their position in the paddock to really become a very highly respected team organization with Meyer Shank?
Yeah, it's kind of like you and I talked about a few weeks ago, right? Yep. Who's that next team that's going to step up? We know Penske, we know Andretti, we know McLaren, and we know Ganassi. But who's that next team that can step up and contend? And I think we kind of thought with Meyer Shank Racing when they won the 2021 Indianapolis 500 with Elio that would be the step. And then Simon Pagenaud, a year later, gets hurt in a wreck. Felix Rosenqvist comes over from McLaren in 2023. And Marcus Armstrong's really brought this team to the next level. He's a young and up-and-coming talent. He ran for Ganassi 2 years ago. Obviously, there's a partnership with Ganassi. Mm-hmm. I think Felix, if you're Felix Rosenqvist, you don't want this to obviously be your last win. You want to contend in the championship, contend for wins. I think it will, and I think Marcus Armstrong's a huge part of that as well. Obviously, the guy was leading probably at one point when the yellow came out, thought that he was going to be the winner of the Indianapolis 500. That you had that three-way finish for third in the race on Sunday, which Armstrong finished fifth. So it's interesting to see, but yeah, very excited for what Meyer Shank can do in the future, and they're probably going to be the Honda factory team in 2028. Yes. So there's another factor that plays into this team. But just overall, I think a huge sigh of relief, not only for Felix, who's in the middle of a contract season. Well, you could basically sign the paperwork yesterday.
Yes.
If you went to the Indianapolis 500. So, it was just it couldn't have happened at a better time for Felix.
Let's go through some of these other storylines. This was really a record payout. It was a massive 50% increase in the overall event purse. We don't talk about that a lot, but Rosenqvist took home a record-shattering $4.34 million in the winner's payout. Now, granted, all of it doesn't go to him, but certainly he gets a part of that. So what do you think contributed to such a big payout for the purse this year?
I think there's just more interest. There's obviously more of a permanent interest from Fox, getting new sponsorships in, getting viewers, selling out the race, having bigger crowds. These are all factors that play in to that money. I mean, $4 million and that's a massive jump from last year. I think Palou got 3.2 or 3.4. So, you just hope it keeps going higher and higher, and you hope that the grandstands are sold out every year, and fans are packing qualifying weekend like we saw 2 weeks ago, and more sponsors involved with TV or with the race want to be involved, and that continues to go up because it's certainly a race that, yes, there's 17 other races on the calendar, but you spend 365 days a year thinking about the Indianapolis 500, how you can win it, and at the end of the day, 32 drivers go home disappointed, and only one can be called the champion. So, I just think there's really good momentum right now in that race. I think, it's not maybe the greatest momentum in the sport right now.
Right.
Because it could go forward 2 steps and then back 3 steps. But I think the Indianapolis 500 is as healthy as we've seen it dating back to 1995 before the split.
Well, and hats off to the Swedish. I mean, Rosenqvist became the third Swedish driver to ever win the Brickyard, joining Kenny Brack back in 1999 and Marcus Ericsson, of course, back in 2022. So that doesn't help a lot. It doesn't happen a lot for the Swedes. So, it was really nice to see their celebration, the Swedish flags flying everywhere. But, we got to talk about Penske, the heartbreak. I mean, while Malukas, it was so sad. I mean, you really felt for the guy, especially being right there. And he was in the elevator with me coming up in the media center, and you could just tell that he was just spent. He was exhausted. He was broken. To be the runner-up for the second consecutive year, and of course his teammate Scott McLaughlin put on an incredible display as well. But Penske, got to also look at Joseph Newgarden. His day ended late in the race. Really thought he was going to try to make a move for another win. So Penske just really didn't have what Penske has normally at the Indy 500.
I thought they had a tale of 3 different races. You had Joseph
Newgarden
starting towards the back and charging all the way up, and just like last year had a rocket ship. He makes a mistake on the restart and finds the wall. You had David Malukas, who was out front the entire day. Should have, was leading at the whites, was leading going into 1 on the last lap, going into 3 and going into 4, and he finishes a disappointing second. Then you have a Scotty McLaughlin who finishes third, who really, honestly, you didn't hear from him much all day. And towards the end of the race, very Rick Mears-ish.
Yes, you're right.
he had one of the best cars out there over that last stint, and he moved himself forward for a third-place finish. So, it was just a tale of 3 different days. You want to win the race. For Malukas and McLaughlin to finish second and third, it was the second straight year that David Malukas has finished second. It was good to see McLaughlin finish third after the disappointment last year of not even getting a chance to take the green flag after he crashed. So I thought it was a tale of 3 different races for the Penske cars.
Well, we had some other really defeating and sad moments, if you will. Of course, Alex Palou, obviously, he was the pole setter. He was down 59 laps. He fell victim to late race results. Ultimately, he got 7th. And then, of course, We think about Ed Carpenter, who spun out in lap 27. Sato, Will Power. Let's talk about Will Power for a moment. Obviously, this was going to be a huge comeback for him to be in Andretti coming off of Penske. It's just not been his year at all. So feel bad for Will Power because his engine blew up in 91. Of course, we just talked about Joseph Newgarden. Any thoughts on some of those big name stories that really just kind of was not a good race for them at all?
I thought overall for Andretti, they didn't have a good month. And I've talked about all month that they needed to qualify better, and their best qualifying effort was Marcus Ericsson in 17th. Ericsson moved his way up to the front, and he did it passing cars. He moved his way up to 5th. That restart at about, lap 160-ish, right when you want to be up towards the front. He was 5th. Kyle Kirkwood was 6th. They were just on the wrong side of that pit cycle, as was Scott Dixon, as was Kiffin Simpson, as were a couple other of those drivers that were consistently in the top 10 all day. Yeah, it's been a rough year for Will Power. I mean, he's flirting with being on the outside of that leader circle money. I think he's 19th in points. He's been one of the fastest cars in the first 2 practices from Detroit. Kyle Kirkwood finishes 16th again. You know, he started too far in the back to move your way up, and your car just changes too much. I thought Ed Carpenter got chopped pretty good by Sato. That's why he ended up in the wall. We obviously saw him very frustrated, very disappointed with that ending. I thought Ed Carpenter Racing in general had a very, very disappointing day. Christian Rasmussen was nowhere to be found. He's on the outside looking in of the top 22 in points. Alexander Rossi had about the same situation as he did last year with the engine burning up. So I thought it was a disappointing day for Andretti and Ed Carpenter Racing for sure.
You know, real quickly, I wanted to go to the other race that happened on Sunday, and that was the Coca-Cola 600. Here in a little bit, we're catching up with Steve Wilson, who's down in Nashville. We're going to be really talking about NASCAR. But, you know, Catherine Legge didn't have a good start at the Indianapolis 500, didn't have a good finish at the NASCAR race. What are our thoughts about Catherine Legge?
Yeah, I mean, obviously not her fault at Indy. She passed a few cars. She was in the middle of the first stint, so you're just trying to hold on to it. And you know, a veteran 500 winner in Ryan Hunter-Reay spins in front of her, and there was just simply nowhere for her to go. And the day ended, and you know, unfortunately, it wasn't her fault at all. But to be able to, you know, to do it, to even attempt it, is something that, you know, we've had about 775, 800. I think it's 761 drivers have attempted the Indianapolis 500, and only 7 now have done it via the double. So 1%. So it just doesn't happen. But for her to be able to do it and then, you know, come home, 4 laps down in Charlotte. I mean, look, it's not like she had the Kyle Larson treatment where she had a McLaren car and a Hendrick Motorsports rocket ship and could contend for both wins. We're talking about an A.J. Foyt car that was fielded by an Indy Next team that was probably the 33rd of 33 cars on that entry list. And we're talking about a Live Fast Motorsports Cup car that, you know, it was probably 1,000 horsepower off and just didn't have the right equipment. So for her to be able to do it in an attempt that I thought it was good. I thought it was good for the female fans to see it being done, especially the young female fans that maybe want to get into racing and see Catherine as a hero and somebody that can go out and compete with the big boys. So it wasn't the results that I think she wanted. Was it the results that were probably expected? Maybe. But I think for her to overall just do it and to be out there and to compete, I thought was huge.
You know, another really sad story that we're going to talk more in detail in the next drop with NASCAR. But Kyle Busch, obviously the passing of Kyle Busch, just such a sad story. And, you know, I wear his hat a lot down there at the track. And I think I probably had 50 people say something to me, hey, I love that hat. Where can I find that hat? That just shows you the impact that Kyle Busch had on the series. And just what I mean, goosebumping watching the opening ceremonies. Well, actually, I was listening to it because I was at the track, but still the opening ceremonies and how they surrounded Kyle Busch's family, and now young Braxton, he's already got a contract. The car's waiting for him. I mean, you kind of want to say, well, let the kid decide what he wants to do, but I think the kid has decided what he wants to do. That line's already been wrote for him. But just what a sad story. Kyle Busch, I just saw this week that he did get cremated, so there's not really a public funeral. But man, one of the greatest racers of all time, certainly raced here at Indianapolis as well. And check my facts here, Tony. I think he also attempted the double. Could be wrong about that, but still, Kyle Busch. We still remember him as it was just such a shocking story. Any thoughts on Kyle Busch?
Yeah, his brother ran the double back in 2014.
Brother, you're right. You're right.
Kyle had such a great track record at IMS, winning multiple Brickyard 400s, winning an Xfinity race out there as well. I was actually at IRP at Lucas Oil Raceway Park when I had found the news, which was a little bit fitting because I remember being there in 2004 when he dominated a nationwide race at the time and got a massive win there when he was coming up to the pipeline of Rick Hendrick. I talked to somebody in the media center that knew Kyle pretty well and was actually with Kyle just days prior to his passing. And her and I were talking about just how we go to these races and we get to know these drivers, and we sometimes just take for granted that they're strapping themselves into a race car at 200 miles an hour, where at any moment anything could go wrong. And we get so used to them climbing out of the race car, and these are healthy, shaped guys. So when you see what happened to Kyle Busch, it's stunning in multiple ways, because you just don't expect that to ever happen. You don't expect it to happen at such a young age, at the age of 41, and you just think about the ways that this could have been prevented. Maybe if that doctor said something 2 weeks ago in Watkins Glen. He still comes back the next week and wins a truck race at Dover. But just incredibly sad losing Kyle Busch, obviously his son Brexton, his wife.
Yeah.
It was nice to see them there. Sometimes when these things happen, you need your alone time, and sometimes it's best to be around the people that knew that significant other the most, and in a place that there was a comfort zone. So you can never prepare for that, and you certainly can never prepare for when it happens, something really off the racetrack that you feel like more than likely should have been prevented.
I absolutely agree. But, now his famous last words, prophetic last words when he went in Dover and he's at the press conference, and, they ask him, how does it feel? I cherish every win, because you never know when it's going to be your last win. That has been played over and over and over and over again, just really become his kind of his mantra as his famous last words from Kyle Busch. And it's just amazing that we didn't know. That was just something that race car drivers say. But that particular thing that he said was incredible. Well, now here, you guys I know are headed up to Detroit. I appreciate you taking some time with us this afternoon. But the series from a high-speed oval to a really bumpy 1.7 mile 9-turn temporary street course along downtown Detroit riverfront. Eminem's going to be on the livery for Felix Rosenqvist. Obviously, they've got this. Meyer Shank's got this relationship with Sirius Radio, and they've got this sponsor with all the different. So it's only fitting that Eminem be on the car. So that's pretty cool. And certainly you got to look at Felix Rosenqvist and the proverbial honeymoon whirlwind of things. He's been on the go ever since Sunday. Had no time to really rest, no time to really prep, but. We'll start with him. What are we looking for with Felix Rosenqvist in Detroit this weekend?
I mean, look, it's tough to come back from after the Indianapolis 500 celebration and put a good run together. You're just tired. It's the best feeling to have, right? But it does seem to translate over to not running well on the streets of Detroit the following week. It's been Belle Isle in the past. It was Milwaukee before that. I think Juan Pablo Montoya in 2015 was the last driver to score a top 6 finish in the following weekend's race. So it's tough. It is very tough. And I think for Felix, it's just, try to get back to the sense of normalcy on a race weekend, right? Is your life ever going to be normal again? No, because you're an Indianapolis 500 winner. But if you get it back to a sense of normalcy this weekend in Detroit, to where it's just another race weekend, and you can dial that in. That's what you got to do. So don't expect them to challenge for a podium, but a solid top 10 finish and keep up in the point standings, I think, would be huge for that 60 car.
Let's talk a little bit about Detroit. I mean, it's got that infamous double-sided pit lane. Detroit features a kind of a unique, tight, double-sided pit lane because space is so constricted on city streets. Teams pit on both sides of the lane, which you got to think is really going to dramatically heighten the risk of chaos, collisions, and certainly during a yellow flag pit stops. What are your thoughts about how that just looks weird?
Yeah, I don't mind it. They did it in Arlington as well, but it was originally for here in Detroit. It's a bumpy track. It's a tough track. It's a concrete jungle, tight turns. From the vantage point, if you're here and you can get up in some of the parking garages and look down, it's one of my favorite vantage points of the entire season. I personally think IndyCar needs a week off. They need a week off to really promote and celebrate their Indy 500 winner. Give everybody, not just the drivers, but the crews and everybody who, from the TV compounds to the mechanics to, officials and drivers it was a grind throughout the month of May. I think everybody needs a week off. And I know you want to keep the momentum going of the rating and coming off of the 500, but you're not going to do that by going to a street course in Detroit. Maybe Gateway I can understand because you stay on an oval and, it's more of that same feel as far as the racing goes. But, if you're going to go to Detroit, I would rather just do it the following week and take this weekend off.
During all the pressers and stuff and qualifications and stuff, we saw a fun banter in the media center with Pato Award and Alex Palou about the push to pass. Well, now we're going to see in Detroit, the drivers will have 150 seconds of push to pass horsepower boost following the 2026 rule tweak. So drivers can deploy it instantly on restarts, but are blocked from using it from the initial race start. So it was fun to watch their banter. It was almost comical. But at the same time, it's a very serious thing for the drivers. What are your thoughts, Tony, on the 150 seconds of push to pass horsepower?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's basically instead of officiating this and then IndyCar had their mess up at Long Beach where they kept the button on, it's basically just going to be a free-for-all. And I think it just really puts it more into the driver's hands and the race strategist's hands on how to operate and when to use it, when to deploy it, and what makes the most sense. And I think, restarts could be more exciting, who's on it, who's not on it, who saves it for the remainder of the lap as to using it at the beginning of the lap. So it's just an added strategy that puts it more in the driver's hands than anything else.
We're talking with Tony Donahue of the Tony D podcast and Unverified, our official IndyCar contributor. We've been talking about the Indianapolis 500. Real quickly, before we wrap it up and put a bow on it here, a couple drivers that we're watching this weekend with the balance. I'm sure you are as well. Alex Palou, three-time reigning series champion, won here in Detroit in 2023 and topped the charts during Friday's opening race practice session. He's clearly shaken off his late race Indy 500 heartbreak, and that's in the rearview. He's ready for Detroit. Alex Palou, what do you think?
Yeah, I think you got to start with Alex Palou is one of your favorites at 1A, and I think 1B is the Concrete King and Kyle Kirkwood. He's averaged a finish of 3.1 on street circuits since 2024 at Detroit. So in that 2-year span, he's averaged a podium finish. Obviously won at Arlington this year. Obviously last year won on the streets of Detroit. And I think this will change, but it's interesting. The 3 races that they've had in downtown Detroit, of the 9 possible podium positions, there's been 9 different drivers. So not one driver has finished on the podium multiple times, which is crazy to think the dominance of the 2 guys we just talked about, and Alex Palou and Kyle Kirkwood. They've won, but they've also not been able to back that up with the podium. So, you go back to 2 years ago when it was Armstrong, Dixon, and Erickson. Last year with Kirkwood and Santino Ferrucci on that podium. So it's been 9 different drivers and 9 different podium spots. So I think that'll change this weekend. It'll be interesting to see. If you're a betting guy, you're kind of looking at it going, all right, who's going to join Palou and Kirkwood on that podium?
And I am a betting guy. In a moment, we're going to ask you for your official $5 pick for the Detroit Grand Prix. What about Scott Dixon and Pato Award for that matter? Dixon won in 2024, while Pato Award has always been exceptionally aggressive and fast on concrete street circuits. Scott Dixon and Pato Award.
Yeah, Pato Award gave me one of the best quotes of the year last year when he was complaining about how much he didn't like Detroit and thought it was a Mickey Mouse track, even though he came home with the fourth place finish. So when Pato says he doesn't like the track, it means he's probably going to run well. So I expect Pato to be up there. Scott Dixon, yeah, you're kind of waiting for him to knock through that door, right? He got the win last year at Mid Ohio, which was on a mistake by Alex Palou. You're waiting for Dixon to show that he can be back in contention for wins, which he's had a consistent season so far this year, but there hasn't been a race where I thought at one point Scott Dixon was going to win it. And the close I think he's gotten to that was when it was lap 104 last Sunday in the 500, and they were red flagged due to rain. So yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what it looks like, how it looks today. Yeah. And I think you got to look at a guy like Marcus Armstrong as well, who's got momentum. He's ran well on street courses. He had a podium here 2 years ago, coming off a really good run at the 500. Can Marcus Armstrong take that next step and be on the podium this weekend?
Absolutely, and this is just a great weekend to be up there. I mean, it's a triple header. You got the the Indy NXT, sorry, by Firestone. Rookie Max Taylor, I mean, man, he's up and coming. We're going to see him in an IndyCar sooner than later, probably. He was very fast in practice, but had a little issues in turn one from what I was watching. But yeah, Max Taylor, you got to look at this kid being going in deep into the developmental series. Sorry.
Yeah, I wrote about this yesterday on my site. It was one of those things that's like, the Indy Next Series this year has been dominated so far by rookies. And Max Taylor has a win, and Tymek Kowalczyk has a win, and Enzo Fittipaldi has a win, and Alessandro Del Tullio has a win, and Nikita Johnson has two. So these are all drivers in their first year of Indy Next. And the veterans like Miles Rowe and Lockie Hughes haven't stepped up, haven't competed. Salvador De Alba, who moved over to Andretti, who's really fast on the oval. So Lockie Hughes has been fast so far up in Detroit. I think he's going to be in contention, and I think Miles Rowe is going to be in contention to win next week at Gateway. But can those veterans of the series, can they close that gap between the rookies that have been getting it done so far to start the season?
I tell you what, as an old school race fan from Indianapolis, I love seeing Emerson Fittipaldi, obviously the grandson of the infamous Emerson Fittipaldi, but I love just seeing that pedigree story grow. We'll have to see how that happens. Plus, IMSA, the WeatherTech Sports Cars Championship, sports cars return to the schedule in Detroit as well. I love watching them here in Indy. Get a chance to go down and cover them. They're a lot of fun too. Tony Donahue of the Tony D Podcast and Unverified joining us here on a Saturday drop on his way up to Detroit. Before I let you go, sir, who is your $5 pick of the week for DraftKings and IndyCar?
It's hard not to pick against Kirkwood or Alex Palou. Obviously, you're not going to get the best odds on that. But I think this weekend it's going to be Alex Palou. He's going to bounce back. I think a lot of people were surprised he didn't win the Indy GP. Obviously, he had, coming off the win out at Long Beach. So I think he gets back to the riding the ship here on the streets this weekend. And I think we're going to see Scott Dixon on the podium alongside Kyle Kirkwood. So I think those three Honda drivers are going to sweep the Chevy weekend.
Tony, where can people find your working masterpieces, sir?
Yeah, Tony D Indy on Twitter, TD Indy24 on Instagram. It's links to all of my content. I've got a Patreon page where I've been typing up articles, and we're going to have a busy month of June here with Road America later in the month and Gateway coming up next week.
All right, buddy. We appreciate you. You drive safe and have a good race weekend.
We're going to stop up here at Big Boy and get a cheeseburger.
I love it. All right. Have one, man. All right. Thanks.
All right, buddy.